Hi everybody, welcome to AI TV. We're broadcasting live from AI Expo Africa 2020, the online edition. We're online obviously because of COVID, and that also means AI TV is virtual this year. We're doing all our interviews on Zoom. And the great thing about this year is we've been able to bring in so many new people from so many new groups, communities all around the world. And one such lady is Naomi Molefe, who is the leader of Women in Big Data South Africa. Welcome, Naomi, to AI Expo Africa and AI TV. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for the invite to come and contribute to this very, very important conversation.
Well, look, Naomi, you know, from all our conversations that we've had that, you know, the community of communities approach to sharing the good news story about what's happening in our region is very important to me and to on what we're doing and to you as well. Now, tell us a little bit and tell our viewers a little bit about women in big data and what you are doing as a community.
Thank you. So Women in Big Data actually stemmed from the efforts of women at Intel in 2015. It was the first chapter was established via Intel in the States. So they felt that, you know, they were doing a lot of work, obviously starting to really engage with a lot of their customers about data and how they can monetize the data and all the related conversations that go with it in the business context. So they started to see that there's actually not a lot of representation of women, you know, in the space. So they started off this forum just as a community of women to connect and inspire each other to grow, you know, in this competency, and as well as, you know, to increase the representation of women. So they started then partnering with other like-minded technology firms in helping grow this community. And by 2016, they had started to expand into the European region. And when we jumped on to, you know, to the community and joined them, we launched in November of 2018, and we were the first South African chapter actually to launch.
Okay. Wow.
Now we're a community of about 18,000 women around the world. We're present in each of the continents, and we're actively driving, you know, this engagement with women related to the big data space.
That's fantastic. I mean, 18,000, you know, is a great number to have. I mean, how many are in the kind of African chapter at the moment, and how can people find out more about you? We'll put the link below, but just give us a little feel for the sort of African representation.
So in the South African space, we've been around for about 2 years. So we're just under 1,000 people, but we have a big following on our social media pages, particularly the Twitter space, because that's where young people, and this is Africa, so the average young person, you know, is very interested in this type of, you know, stuff. But we are also actively trying to, you know, broaden it to professional women who have established careers in, you know, any kind of field really in business, because big data is going to be impacting the way we do work in future. So it's very important for women to join us in, you know, trying to understand how they can then pivot their careers. But we are soon to launch a Nigeria chapter. I'm happy to announce that in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be led by Aitinyu Olufemi, and she's based in Lagos. So what we're trying to do is, I'm leading the charge in this, is really to hone in on the African region and help African women be part of the conversation and not get left behind.
Well, I mean, one of the things that's been a resounding kind of theme throughout the last few days of the show, and in some of the other conversations that we've had, has been this topic around new skills emerging, new requirements for people to actually look at some of the most important aspects of some of this technology deployment, not necessarily related to the technology per se, as in sort of software development or anything like that, but really more to do with the softer skills around ethics, change management, program management, looking at capability and competency, maturity frameworks. Now, that is a growing area, and I know I've spoken to a couple of female leaders in this regard. Naomi, do you want to sort of comment on that? Because I think this is an emerging area where I think, there's a growing opportunity.
Women in general, but biologically, we've just been predisposed or wired to care about the well-being of others. And this is what we're starting to see even in the technology space, where we are now starting to see a growing trend of women actually going into the ethicist part of the disciplines, the AI discipline. I'm very interested in that discipline, because I think it's very important for us to keep the end in mind of the type of world that we're trying to develop, with the data that we're going to be analyzing and creating products from, and having decisions made, from. It needs to, at the center, it needs to be the ethics part, and we can't take it out of that conversation. And I think in the deployment of technology, we also need to be mindful that this is not just a technology, intervention, it's also a behavioral one. So the minute we start asking people to use the technology, to engage with it, to help us make the decisions, we are actually impacting the behavioral aspect. And that also changes the way we do things. It changes the way we write policy. It changes the way we police, for example, in the law enforcement area. It changes the way that the justice systems, operate. It just changes the way society, the fabric of society is. So I think it's very, very, noble for us to really want to be part of that type of discipline as women. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot more of us having the very controversial conversations, because that's where also they happen, right? When people are pushing the technology in a particular, society that isn't necessarily digitally literate, are we keeping top of mind the ethical part of this technology deployment? Yeah.
I think it's also, the important voice of things like minorities and people in more rural environments, people who've come from previously disadvantaged backgrounds. I mean, we saw an uptick this year in the female percentage of people at the show. I think we were 26% last year, with 32% this year in terms of delegate makeup for women. And we had 30% female speakers as well. I mean, actually, Kay Firth Butterfield gave one of the keynotes, which is fantastic. But yeah, look, I think this is an emerging, the softer skills area, arguably more important than the technology. Without that, the technology fails, or the technology is deployed incorrectly, or perhaps even worse still, the technology becomes biased or actually inaccurate. And I think, this is a growing area that I think any female graduate or learner who is wanting to think about a career, things like design thinking, creative thinking, these are all new skill sets now, which are probably more important than they ever were. So, Naomi, just to wrap up, if people want to find out a little bit more about women in big data and join your community, what's the website address?
We're currently actually revamping our South African website. So I would encourage everyone to get us on the global one, which is www.womeninbigdata.org. We also have Twitter pages, Data Women SA. Also our Facebook page is Women in Big Data SA. So that's where you can catch us on. That's where we're really, really active. We also have a LinkedIn group. If you can search Women in Big Data South Africa,
I'll put all that in.
Yeah, you will find us in that group. And we really look forward to engaging with more women of all, disciplines. This is not necessarily for, the technical, people who have a background in that. I don't have a background in technical big data, although my career actually started in the research space. So I think it's very important to highlight that, because it kind of intimidates women from joining such forums and actually educating themselves on how to remain, competitive as professionals in future.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm an old chemist. I'm not a software developer. I may have the forehead of a techie, but I'm not a techie. And I think the message really for anybody, and it's one of the reasons why we created our forum, the AI Expo Forum, is go along and join. Just turn up, join, subscribe, follow your Twitter handle, follow.
Be curious, exactly.
Exactly.
Be curious, read up, get engaged. Just now you have a qualification in data science, and you don't even know how you got there because you kept to that intellectual curiosity.
Yeah, well, I know from people in the field who work for some of the biggest tech vendors in the world, even they can't keep with what they're doing in their own companies, and you're never going to know everything. So the key thing is, if you're curious and you're passionate and you want to open up a whole new door on your career, join some of these communities. It's the communities that can open doors for you. And if you walk through the community door, you'll find maybe 10 or 15 new doors that existed that you never knew about before.
Exactly.
People like you who are driving that, Naomi, are the absolute champions that are helping so many more people. And wish you well with the growth of Women in Big Data SA and the Nigeria chapter and the whole African movement. And we'll put all those links below. But it just leaves me to say thanks for joining us on AI TV for the online edition of AI Expo Africa. We hope we go back to face next year. But Naomi, thanks very much for joining us, and good luck with the growth of your community.
Thank you, Nick.